Oh, hello there. Okay, then let's actually just start things off. I just need to just open up screen sharing and to have some kind of a. I'm sorry again because of the terrible lighting makes the camera. I mean, the camera's okay, but the lighting at present is a bit not great. So that's why it kind of does this right now. So can't do anything with that. So I'm just going to. Okay, then now we're just gonna have to wait for someone to actually show up again because I'm not doing this for nobody. So as soon as someone actually shows up, then we'll actually start. There was someone here and then they left, so yeah. I'm not really reading anything for 0 people watching. So okay, let's see this. Okay then, I guess we can start. So let me just find the page. Let's just zoom in a bit. I really hate how tiny the font in these old Weird Tales issues is. Well, okay then. I left again. Well, that means I'm not continuing until someone actually shows up. So, okay. I hope you don't actually show up and then disappear again. It would really suck. So, where is it? There we go. So, this is The Love Dead, which is the last of the 4 stories officially published. Okay then. The moment there's 0, I'm stopping all reading and narration and additional explanation or anything related to it until such a time as someone actually shows up again. Okay, just noting that the moment we hit 0, I immediately stop narration until someone actually shows up. And there we go. And I'm not sure if this is being done on purpose, so. I can wait. I can wait. And, if no one shows up, I can just cancel the entire stream and delete the VOD and redo it tomorrow. It's not like I want to do it today, but if no one shows up, then I'm not gonna read to no one. It's just my okay. And well, I'd prefer if someone actually wrote in the comments. I'm just gonna. Oh, it's 2 people now. Does it mean I can actually start? No. Hope so. So, well. So. And I got a like on this, but I'm just going to sit here and wait until there's someone on here. I'm not going to just start reading and then stop and then start and then stop and then start and stop. The moment I start, it's going to go back to zero, isn't it? At least someone writes in chat so I know they're actually here and it's not just someone perusing it. Let me just check here. Well, okay. If someone actually said something in the chat, I would know that someone is actually watching. Okay. Well, I can start now, I guess. All right. So this is the Loved Dead, the last of the 4 stories that officially were published under C.M.Eddy Jr.'s name, but were ghostwritten by H.P. Lovecraft. We've read the other 3 in previous streams, so now we only have this one left. This is this on screen is the cover for a vinyl release. I don't specifically remember the details, but yeah, since there was no illustration or anything in the actual story, this is the only real thing I can show off visually. So let me just try and find the start of the story. Sorry. So it's The Loved Dead. It is midnight. Before dawn they will find me and take me to a black cell where I shall languish interminably. Also, before I do that, I wonder. Okay, can I haven't actually done. Oh right, I didn't actually put. Wait, it is. Wait a second. I actually have a new mic plugged in, but what if I unplug it? How is this going to sound? Like, what is the sound volume on this now? Sounds. I know it's going to be worse quality. I'm just looking at the volume levels it's giving me, and then if I put this back in, then it should theoretically. Okay, I'm just going to put this here, and hopefully it sounds a bit better. Okay. I don't know how that. I don't know if there's where the settings for this are in the studio, if there are any specific settings for this. But okay, fair enough. Let's just start. So, it is midnight. Before dawn they will find me and take me to a black cell where I shall languish interminably, while insatiable desires gnaw at my vitals and wither up my heart, till at last I become one with the dead that I love. My seat is the fetid hollow of an aged grave. My desk is the back of a fallen tombstone, worn smooth by devastating centuries. My only light is that of the stars and a thin-edged moon, yet I can see as clearly as though it were midday. Around me on every side, sepulchral sentinels guarding unkempt graves, the tilting, decrepit headstones lie half hidden in masses of nauseous, rotting vegetation. Above the rest, silhouetted against the livid sky, An august monument lifts its austere, tapering spire like the spectral chieftain of a Lemurian horde. The air is heavy with the noxious odours of fungi and the scent of damp, mouldy earth, but to me it is the aroma of Elysium. It is still, terrifyingly still, with a silence whose very profundity bespeaks the solemn and the hideous. Could I choose my habitation, it would be in the heart of some such city of putrefying flesh and crumbling bones. For their nearness sends for their nearness sends ecstatic thrills through my soul, causing the stagnant blood to race through my veins and my torpid heart to pound with delirious joy. For the presence of death is life to me. My early childhood was one long prosaic and monotonous apathy, strictly ascetic, wan, pallid, undersized, and subject to protracted spells of morbid moroseness. I was ostracized by the healthy, normal youngsters of my age. They dubbed me a spoil sport, an old woman, because I had no interest in the rough, childish games they played, or any stamina to participate in them, had I so desired. Like all rural villages, Fendham had its quota of poison-tongued gossip. Their prying imaginations hailed my lethargic temperament as some abhorrent abnormality. They compared me with my parents and shook their heads in ominous doubt at the vast difference. Some of the more superstitious openly pronounced me a changeling, while others, who knew something of my ancestry, called attention to a vague, mysterious rumour concerning a great-great-grand-uncle who had been burned at the stake as a necromancer. Had I lived in some larger town with greater opportunities for congenial companionship, perhaps I could have overcome this early tendency to be a recluse. As I reached my teens, I grew even more sullen, morbid, and apathetic. Sorry, I'm just checking the chat for a second. My life lacked motivation. I seemed in the grip of something that dulled my senses, stunted my development, retarded my activities, and left me unaccountably dissatisfied. I was 16 when I attended my first funeral. A funeral in Fenham was a preeminent social event, for our town was noted for the longevity of its inhabitants. When, moreover, the funeral was that of such a well-known character as my grandfather, it was safe to assume that the townspeople would turn out en masse to pay due homage to his memory. Yet I did not view the approaching ceremony with even latent interest. Anything that tended to lift me out of my habitual inertia held for me only the promise of a physical and mental disquietude. In deference to my parents' importunings, mainly to give myself relief from their caustic condemnations of what they chose to call my unfilial attitude, I agreed to accompany them. There was nothing out of the ordinary about my grandfather's funeral, unless it was the voluminous array of floral tributes. But this, remember, was my initiation to the solemn rites of such an occasion. Something about the darkened room, the oblong coffin with its sombre drapings, the banked masses of fragrant blooms, the dolorous manifestations of the assembled villagers stirred me from my normal listlessness and arrested my attention. Roused from my momentary reverie by a nudge from my mother's sharp elbow, I followed her across the room to the casket where the body of my grandparent lay. For the first time I was face to face with death. I looked down upon the calm, placid face lined with its multitudinous wrinkles and saw nothing to cause so much of sorrow. Instead, it seemed to me that grandfather was immeasurably content, blankly satisfied. I felt swayed by some strange, discordant sense of elation. So slowly, so stealthily had it crept over me that I could scarcely define its coming. As I mentally review the portentous hour, it seems that it must have originated with my first glimpse of that funeral scene, silently strengthening its grip with a subtle insidiousness. A baleful, malignant influence that seemed to emanate from the corpse itself held me with a magnetic fascination.
My whole being seemed charged with some ecstatic, electrifying force, and I felt my form straighten without conscious volition. My eyes were trying to burn beneath the closed lids of the dead man's and read some secret messages they concealed. My heart gave a sudden leap of unholy glee and pounded against my ribs with demoniacal force, as if to free itself from the confining walls of my frail frame. Wild, wanton, soul-satisfying sensuality engulfed me. Once more the vigorous prod of a Once more the vigorous prod of the maternal elbow jarred me into activity. I had made my way to the sable-shrouded coffin with leaden tread. I walked away with new-found animation. I accompanied the cortege to the cemetery, my whole physical being permeated with this mystic enlivening influence. It was as if I had quaffed deep draughts of some exoteric elixir, some abominable concoction brewed from blasphemous formulae in the archives of Belial. The townsfolk were so intent upon the ceremony that the radical change in my demeanour passed unnoticed by all save my father and my mother, but in the fortnight that followed the village busybodies found fresh material for their vitriolic tongues in my altered bearing. At the end of the fortnight, however, the potency of the stimulus began to lose its effectiveness. Another day or two, and I had completely reverted to my old-time languor, though not the complete and engulfing insipidity of the past. Before there had been an utter lack of desire to emerge from the enervation. Now vague and indefinable unrest disturbed me. Outwardly I had become myself again, and the scandal-mongers turned to some more engrossing subject. Had they even so much as dreamed the true cause of my exhilaration, they would have shunned me as if I were a filthy, leprous thing. Had I envisioned the execrable power behind my brief period of elation, I would have locked myself forever from the rest of the world and spent my remaining years in penitent solitude. Tragedy often runs in trilogies, hence despite the proverbial longevity of our townspeople, the next 5 years brought the deaths of both parents. My mother went first, in an accident of the most unexpected nature, and so genuine was my grief that I was honestly surprised to find its poignancy mocked and contradicted by that almost forgotten feeling of supreme and diabolical ecstasy. Once more my heart leaped wildly within me. Once more it pounded at trip hammer speed and sent the hot blood coursing through my veins with meteoric fervor. I shook from my shoulders the harassing cloak of stagnation, only to replace it with the infinitely more horrible burden of loathsome, unhallowed desire. I haunted the death chamber where the body of my mother lay, my soul athirst for the devilish nectar that seemed to saturate the air of the darkened room. Every breath strengthened me, lifted me to towering heights of seraphic satisfaction. I knew now that it was but a sort of drugged delirium which must soon pass, and leave me correspondingly weakened by its malign power. Yet I could no more control my longing than I could untwist the Gordian knots in the already tangled skein of my destiny. I knew, too, that through some strange satanic curse my life depended upon the dead for its motive force. That there was a singularity in my make-up which responded only to the awesome presence of some lifeless clod. A few days later, frantic for the bestial intoxicant on which the fullness of my existence depended, I interviewed Fenham's sole undertaker and talked him into taking me in a sort of apprenticeship. The shock of my mother's demise had visibly affected my father. I think that if I had broached the idea of such outre employment at any other time, he would have been emphatic in his refusal. As it was, he nodded acquiescence after a moment's sober thought. How little did I dream that he would be the object of my first practical lesson. He too died suddenly, developing some hitherto unsuspected heart affliction. My octogenarian employer tried his best to dissuade me from the unthinkable task of embalming his body, nor did he detect the rapturous glint in my eyes. I finally won him over to my damnable point of view. I cannot hope to express the reprehensible, the unutterable thoughts that swept in tumultuous waves of passion through my racing heart as I laboured over the lifeless clay. Unsurpassable love was the keynote of these concepts, a love greater, far greater than any I had ever borne him while he was alive. Sorry, second, chat for a second. My father was not a rich man, but he had possessed enough of worldly goods to make him comfortably independent. As his sole heir, I found myself in rather paradoxical position. My early youth had totally failed to fit me for contact with the modern world, yet the primitive life of Fenham, with its attendant isolation, palled upon me. Indeed, longevity of the inhabitants defeated my sole motive in arranging my indenture. After settling the estate, it proved an easy matter to secure my release, and I headed for Bayborough, a city some 50 miles away. Here my year of apprenticeship stood me in good stead. I had no trouble in establishing a favourable connection as an assistant with the Gresham Corporation, a concern that maintained the largest funeral parlours in the city. I even prevailed upon them to let me sleep upon the premises, for already the proximity of the dead was becoming an obsession. I applied myself to my task with unwonted zeal. No case was too gruesome for my impious sensibilities, and I soon became master at my chosen vocation. Every fresh corpse brought into the establishment meant a fulfilled promise of ungodly gladness, of irreverent gratification, a return of that rapturous tumult of the arteries which transformed my grisly task into one of beloved devotion. Yet every such carnal satiation exacted its toll. I came to dread the days that brought no dead for me to gloat over, and pray to all the obscene gods of the nethermost abysses to bring swift, sure death upon the residents of the city. Then came the nights when a skulking figure stole surreptitiously through the shadowy streets of the suburbs, pitch-dark nights when the midnight moon was obscured by heavy lowering clouds. It was a furtive figure that blended with the trees and cast fugitive glances over its shoulder, a figure bent on some malignant mission. After one of those prowlings, the morning papers would scream to their sensation-mad clientele the details of some nightmare crime, column on column of lurid gloatings over abominable atrocities, paragraph on paragraph of impossible solutions and extravagant, conflicting suspicions. Through it all, I felt a supreme sense of security, for who would for a moment suspect an employee in an undertaking establishment where death was supposedly an everyday affair, of seeking surcease from unnameable urgings in the cold-blooded slaughter of his fellow beings? I planned each crime with maniacal cunning, varying the manner of my murders so that no one would even dream that all were the work of one blood-stained pair of hands. The aftermath of each nocturnal venture was an ecstatic hour of pleasure, pernicious and unalloyed, a pleasure always heightened by the chance that its delicious source might later be assigned to my gloating administrations in the course of my regular occupation. Sometimes that double and ultimate pleasure did occur, O rare and delicious memory, during long nights when I clung close to the shelter of my sanctuary. I was prompted by the mausoleum silence to devise new and unspeakable ways of lavishing my affections upon the dead that I loved, the dead that gave me life. One morning Mr. Gresham came much earlier than usual, came to find me stretched upon a cold slab deep in gooey slumber, my arms wrapped about the stark, stiff, naked body of a fetid corpse. He roused me from my salacious dreams, his eyes filled with mingled detestation and pity. Gently but firmly he told me that I must go, that my nerves weren't strung, that I needed a long rest from the repellent tasks my vocation required, that my impressionable youth was too deeply affected by the dismal atmosphere of my environment. How little did he know of the demoniacal desires that spurred me on in my disgusting infirmities. I was wise enough to see that an argument would only strengthen his belief in my potential madness. It was far better to leave than to invite discovery of the motive underlying my actions. After this, I dared not stay long in one place for fear some overt act would bear my secret to an unsympathetic world. I drifted from city to city, from town to town. I worked in morgues around cemeteries, once in a crematory, anywhere that afforded me an opportunity to be near the dead that I so craved. Then came the World War. I was one of the first to go across, one of the last to return. 4 years of blood-red charnel hell, sickening slime of rain-rotten trenches, deafening bursting of hysterical shells, monotonous droning of sardonic bullets, smoking frenzies of Fleckton's fountains, stifling fumes of murderous gases, grotesque remnants of smashed and... Sorry, I need to turn the page. Of smashed and shredded bodies, 4 years of transcendent satisfaction. In every wanderer there is a latent urge to return to the scenes of his childhood. A few months later found me making my way through the familiar byways of Fenham. Vacant, dilapidated farmhouses lined the adjacent roadsides, while the years had brought equal retrogression to the town itself. A mere handful of the houses were occupied, but among these was the one I had once called home. The tangled, weed-choked driveway, the broken window panes, the uncared-for acres that stretched behind all bore mute confirmation of the tales that guarded inquiries had elicited, that it now sheltered a dissolute drunkard who eked out a meagre existence from the chores his few neighbours gave him out of sympathy, for the mistreated wife and undernourished child who shared his lot. All in all, the glamour surrounding my youthful environment was entirely dispelled. So prompted by some errant foolhardy thought, I next turned my steps towards Bayborough. Here too the years had brought changes, but in a reverse order. The small city I remembered had almost doubled in size, despite its wartime depopulation. Instinctively I sought my former place of employment, finding it still there, but with an unfamiliar name and successor to above the door, for the influenza epidemic had claimed Mr. Gresham, while the boys were overseas. Some fateful mood impelled me to ask for work. I referred to my tutelage under Mr. Gresham with some trepidation, but my fears were groundless. Any late employer had carried the secret of my late employer had carried the secret of my unethical conduct with him to the grave. An opportune vacancy ensured my immediate reinstallation. Then came vagrant, haunting memories of scarlet nights of impious pilgrimages, and an uncontrollable desire to renew those illicit joys. I cast caution to the winds, and launched upon another series of damnable debaucheries. Once more the yellow sheets found welcome material in the devilish details of my crimes, compared them to the red weeks of horror that had appalled the city years before. Once more the police sent out their dragnet, and drew into its enmeshing folds nothing. My thirst for the noxious nectar of the dead grew to a consuming fire, and I began to shorten the periods between my odious exploits. I realized that I was treading on dangerous ground, but demonic desire gripped me in its torturing tentacles and urged me on. All this time my mind was becoming more and more benumbed to any influence except the satiation of my insane longings. Little details vitally important to one bent on such evil escapades escaped me. Somehow, somewhere, I left a vague trace, an effusive clue behind, not enough to warrant my arrest, but sufficient to turn the tide of suspicion in my direction. I sensed this espionage, yet was helpless to stem the surging demands for more dead to quicken my nerviated soul. Okay, checking the chat first for a bit, and I'm going to just wait for someone to show up again before I continue, so I'm just going to drink something for a moment. So, I'm thirsty anyway, so it's just where it is. Okay, now we can continue. So Then came the night when the shrill whistle of the police aroused me from my fiendish gloating over the body of my latest victim, a gory razor still clutched tightly in my hand. With one dexterous motion I closed the blade and thrust it into the pocket of the coat I wore. Nightsticks beat a lusty tattoo upon the door. I crashed the window with a chair, thanking fate I had chosen one of the cheaper tenement districts for my locale. I dropped into a dingy alley as blue-coated forms burst through the shattered door. Over shaky fences, through filthy backyards, past squalid ramshackle houses, down dimly lighted narrow streets I fled. I thought at once of the wooded marshes that lay beyond the city, and stretched for 100 miles till they touched the outskirts of Fenham. If I could reach this goal, I would be temporarily safe. Before dawn, I was plunging headlong through the foreboding wasteland, stumbling over the rotting roots of half-dead trees whose naked branches stretched out like grotesque arms, striving to encumber me with mocking embraces. Just waiting again. I'll update this. Okay. Now waiting for someone else to show up again. Okay, we're moving on here for a second. Okay, update that page. Okay, now we can continue. I was having a message. Okay, let me just. I guess there we go. The imps of the nefarious gods to whom I offered my idolatrous prayers must have guided my footsteps through that menacing morass. A week later, van, bedraggled and emaciated, I lurked in the woods. I lurked in the woods a mile from Fenham. So far I had eluded my pursuers, yet I dared not show myself, for I knew that the alarm must have been broadcast. Well, actually, it says must have been sent broadcast, which that's a bit of an odd formulation, but okay. I vaguely hoped I had thrown them off the trail. After that first frenetic night, I'd heard no sound of alien voices, no crashings of heavy bodies through the underbrush. Perhaps they had concluded that my body lay hidden in some stagnant pool, or had vanished forever in the tenacious quagmire. Hunger gnawed at my vitals with poignant pangs, thirst left my throat parched and dry. Yet far worse was the unbearable hunger of my starving soul for the stimulus I found only in the nearness of the dead. My nostrils quivered in sweet recollection. No longer could I delude myself with the thought that this desire was a mere whim of the heated imagination. I knew now that it was an integral part of life itself, that without it I should burn out like an empty lamp. I summoned all my remaining energy to fit me for the task of satisfying my cursed appetite. Despite the peril attending my move, I set out to reconnoitre, skirting the sheltering shadows like an obscene wraith. Once more I felt that strange sensation of being led by some unseen satellite of Satan. Yet even my sin-steeped soul revolted for a moment when I found myself before my native abode, the scene of my youthful hermitage. Then these disquieting memories faded. In their place came overwhelming lustful desires. Behind the rotting walls of this old house lay my prey. A moment later I had raised one of the shattered windows and clambered over the sill. I listened for a moment, every sense alert, every muscle tensed for action. The silence reassured me. With cat-like tread I stole through the familiar rooms until Stertorus, yes, that is how you pronounce that, I guess stertorous probably is better. So, until stertorous snores indicated the place where I was to find surcease from my sufferings. I allowed myself a sigh of anticipatory ecstasy as I pushed open the door of the bedchamber. Panther-like, I made my way to the supine form stretched out in drunken stupor. The wife and child, where were they? Well, they could wait. My clutching fingers groped for his throat. Hours later, I was again the fugitive, but a new-found stolen strength was mine. Free, silent form slept to wake no more. It was not until the garish light of day penetrated my hiding place that I visualized the certain consequences of my rashly purchased relief. By this time, the bodies must have been discovered. Even the most obtuse of the rural police must surely link the tragedy with my flight from the nearby city. Besides, for the first time I had been careless enough to leave some tangible proof of my identity, my fingerprints on the throat of the newly dead. All day I shivered in nervous apprehension. The mere crackling of a dry twig beneath my feet conjured mental images that appalled me. That night, under cover of the protecting darkness, I skirted Fenham and made for the woods that lay beyond. Before dawn came the first definite hint of renewed pursuit, the distant baying of hounds. Through the long night I pressed on, but by morning I could feel my artificial strength ebbing. Noon brought once more the insistent call of the contaminating curse, and I knew I must fall by the way unless I could once more experience that exotic intoxication that came only with the proximity of the loved dead. I travelled in a wide semicircle. If I pushed steadily ahead, midnight would bring me to the cemetery where I had laid away my parents years before. My only hope, I felt certain, lay in reaching the goal before I was overtaken. With a silent prayer to the devils that dominated my destiny, I turned leaden feet in the direction of my last stronghold. God, can it be that a scant 12 hours have passed since I started for my ghostly sanctuary? I have lived an eternity in each leaden hour, but I have reached a rich reward. The noxious odours of this neglected spot are frankincense to my suffering soul. The first streaks of dawn are greying the horizon. They are coming. My sharp ears catch the far-off howling of the dogs. It is but a matter of minutes now before they find me and shut me away forever from the rest of the world, to spend my days in ravaging yearnings till at last I join the dead I love. They shall not take me. A way of escape is open, a coward's choice perhaps, but better, far better than endless months of nameless misery. I will leave this record behind me, that some soul may perhaps understand why I make this choice. The razor, it was nestled forgotten in my pocket since my flight from Bayborough. Its blood-stained blade gleams oddly in the waning light of the thin-edged moon. One slashing stroke across my left wrist, and deliverance is assured. Warm, fresh blood spatters grotesque patterns on dingy, decrepit slabs. Phantasmal hordes swarm over the rotting graves. Spectral fingers beckon me. Ethereal fragments of unwritten melodies rise in celestial crescendo. Distant stars dance drunkenly in demoniac accompaniment. 1,000 tiny hammers beat hideous dissonances on anvils inside my chaotic brain. Grey ghosts of slaughtered spirits prayed in mocking silence before me. Scorching tongues of invisible flame sear the brand of hell upon my sickened soul. I can write no more. So that was The Love Dead by Lovecraft, and I guess C.M.Eddy as well a bit. I'm just going to put these to the side because I don't want to accidentally nudge either of us and make it fall down. I have the next thing I want to read already set up, and I just need a quick drink because my throat's a bit raspy from that reading. Okay. Next bit that I'm going to read. So the next bit we're going to read is from Frank Owen. It's from a different issue of Weird Tales. Actually, I believe it's from the one we read from last time. that includes I can actually, I'll leave this open because I don't know if I'm going to have to open it again. Sorry, I'm trying to find it because I had it here. That's a different Frank Owen. There we go. This is a one-page story by Frank Owen. That was I can actually. This is a one-page story by Frank Owen from. I'm actually going to have to look it up because I have it open in multiple places. There we go. From the issue number 4 from the 1924 edition of Weird Tales. So we're going to read this one, but for just a second, I just need to update this. Okay, so this is presented. Hold on, I accidentally turned the page at the very beginning. So now I have to actually copy this. Sorry, a bit of a technical snag there. Because I'm just showing, because I have a separate version of this opened up where I have it maximized, so I can actually read it. I'm showing you the full page just so you have something different to look at, and just so that I can also make sure that be able to tell. I was to stop this. Sorry, I'm just annoyed by another thing. I accidentally highlighted the entire text and it wouldn't unhighlight it. We just was switching from page to page. Sorry, just going to be hopefully another minute at most until it loads the page again, because it's now reloaded again. And I don't know why this always happens when I'm doing this. Why are you not? No, seriously, what the hell? Why did it not reload it? There we go. Okay. So this is I hate it when it doesn't do anything, but then when I go to refresh it, it suddenly shows me the thing it totally was doing and did, but just wasn't displaying it. That really helps. So yeah, let's just go. This is a 5-minute yarn by Frank Owen, and it's called Shadows. In abject terror, Todd Grogan crouched on the stairs. The house was in utter darkness, supposedly deserted, yet down below he could hear the sound of someone moving stealthily about. Cold perspiration broke out on his forehead as though his brow were a sieve. His teeth chattered and his hands shook as if he were palsied. In the great folds of blackness which enveloped him like a shroud, nothing could be discerned. From the bleak and barren mountain solitudes the wail of coyotes drifted to his ears, but from the room below came a sound still more terrible, the faint rustle of someone moving cautiously about. Todd Grogan was a fugitive from justice. Oh, nice similarity there. In fact, he had always been a fugitive. Since earliest childhood he had fought incessantly against shadows, and now he was menaced by the greatest shadow of all. Folks used to say of him, "He's afraid of his own shadow," but what no one suspected was that he was afraid of everybody else's shadow as well. When there were no shadows, Todd Grogan was fearless, but where they existed his terror was boundless. The fears which he had encountered during his lifetime had made of him a pitiful wreck, fears none the less frightful because they existed only in his own twisted mind. And then there had come a day which had marked a nauseating climax in his life. He had killed a man in a fit of temporary insanity, up in the hills where the huge pine trees loomed up to meet the sun like great gaunt spectres, when the ground was covered with frozen snow which crouched beneath his feet like breaking bones. He had been lost for 3 days and nights. During the hours of sunlight he had been far from valiant, but as the shadows of evening crept down over the purpling hills, Fear drove him absolutely mad, and he raced through the weird, eerie forest, shrieking like a madman. Thus he raved and tore about through the echoing woods until he fell exhausted. Then one night, as he rushed through the mountains in the pitch blackness, he had run full tilt into a man. With a cry of horror, Todd Grogan drew his knife and struck. When the authorities found him, he was still chopping away at the shapeless, lifeless body. Several days later, he was given a perfunctory trial, convicted of murder in the first degree, and thrust into prison. His guilt was established. The trial was merely a legal formality. Then followed dreary hours of solitude, unbroken save when the old guard brought him food. At night he lay on his cot in the dark prison cell, waiting for the dreaded hour that would rob him of his life, his mind, a chaos of fantastic emotions. He wondered about death, what would come afterward. Perhaps a man's life was simply snuffed out by death and his soul existed no longer. He did not He did not really fear death, but the thoughts of the countless shadows through which he would have to pass before the ultimate end made of him a pitiful thing. In the yard they were building a scaffold. The sounds of the hammering came to his ears like the ominous beatings of drums playing a funeral dirge. Only a few more days and the black cap would be placed upon his eyes, and he would be let out like a beast to be strangled in the presence of a few friends of the state who had been invited to witness the event. Lying in his cell, he imagined he could see his blackened face, protruding eyes, and foaming lips, and it would all happen in darkness. That was the most terrible thought of all. One morning he overpowered the old guard, and after stealing his clothes, he left the prison without opposition from anyone. I'm just checking the chat. Okay, now then. Whether or not he had killed the guard he neither knew nor cared. He was free, nothing else mattered. And yet, can a fugitive ever be free? Todd Grogan had escaped from jail, but he could not break away from the clutching grip of shadows. Now, as he crouched on the stairs, his blood had turned to ice. He listened. There was no mistaking the fact that someone was moving about in the room below. Perhaps there were more than one. Perhaps the house was surrounded and escape impossible. There was not the faintest ray of light anywhere discernible. Even the moon was hidden by billows of cloud. The blackness yawned up the stairs with such an intensity that it seemed peopled by 1,000 grotesque shapes. In his hand, Todd Grogan clutched a revolver which he had stolen from the prison guard. In it lay his only hope. He crept cautiously down the stairs. The boards creaked as loudly as the snap of a whip. At the foot of the stairs, he paused. The sound was much more distinct now. He tried to locate the corner from whence it came, then fired twice. For a moment, he waited, and then, as the sound was repeated, he knew that he had failed. Again he fired once, twice, 3 times, but the sound continued. He had only 1 cartridge left. He hesitated for a fraction of a second only. Then, pressing the revolver to his temple, he fired the last cartridge. And now the moon broke through the clouds and shone softly into the room. Todd Grogan's body lay in the direct path of the light. His glazed eyes seemed turned toward the moon. Out of the shadows, a huge black cat padded softly forth and licked the dead man's cheek. So that was the first Frank Owen. Actually, there was another Frank Owen lined up, but from a different magazine, actually. But right now, I'm just going to be quickly going to the bathroom. I'll be back in a few minutes. I'm just going to put a note in the chat as well. In a few minutes, going to the bathroom. There we go. I'm back. So now then, let me just find the next thing that I actually had in mind. I need to I had these 3 stories in mind, 3 short ones from female or seemingly female writers from Weird Tales. So I'm just going to. I can take this. I can turn this off. Yes, that's good. That's good. And now let's actually put this so where I can actually read it. Okay. This next one is. This next one is the voice of the voice of Euphemia, a strange tale of the spirit world, by someone named Eudora Ramsay Richardson. I'm just going to, yes, make sure that looks a bit better on the screen. Okay, we can start then. Again, I'm forced to show just the regular pages because this doesn't have any kind of distinct illustration or anything. So, the voice of Euphemia. So just very quickly before I do that, I need to update this. Okay. And you really believe, I ask, that you can transmit your thoughts to a girl 600 miles away? I've always communicated with Euphemia when we were separated, Percy Legare replied earnestly. Through all my childhood she was my only friend. Euphemia and I have shared everything, even our thoughts. Give me some proof, I suggested. What is Euphemia doing now? Percy made no immediate answer. In his eyes there came that faraway look that set him apart from the other boys in our university. The incident occurred, as I now vividly recall, in the twilight of a late October evening. We were sitting on a balcony that overlooked the back campus. It was not a cheerful scene that lay before us, the trees bare-limbed and gaunt above a carpet of seared leaves, the sky losing its vast glow of daylight. Suddenly Legare's rapt expression gave place to one of extreme terror. Clutching my hand and seeming not to see me, he cried out sharply. Then, for the space of 5 minutes, the longest I have ever endured, he was silent. And then, she is safe now, but she has been in great danger, calling upon me for help. I can never see her, I can only hear the messages she sends. That evening Legare seemed shaken, though not in fear for Euphemia's safety. I was entirely unconvinced, however, until he brought me, 2 days later, a letter from Euphemia telling of a narrow escape from drowning. The experience, I remember, rendered me decidedly uncomfortable. A practical boy of 19, I was little interested in psychic phenomena. I was interested, however, in Percy Legare. He was my David and I his Jonathan, the only close friend Legare had on campus. In appearance, in taste, in finesse, and fineness of sensibility, Legare was different from the other boys. There was about him a classical beauty reminiscent of Greek art. Tall and slightly built he was, with an abundance of fair hair that swept back from a forehead high and broad. He was at college only 1 year, and during that time was as completely untouched by the life about him as were the chaste marble statues in the foyer. I thought him very lonely until he told me of Euphemia. Euphemia was the woman he loved, the woman who loved him and who knew scarcely another man. For generations Legare's family and Euphemia's had lived on island plantations off the coast of South Carolina, isolated from the mainland, but accessible by rowboat to each other. They made few trips to the mainland, but the little boats for 200 years had with unbroken frequency crossed the narrow channel that separated the two islands. Just going to very quickly check the chat. Okay, continue. Where am I? Sorry. Yeah. Sons and daughters had been tutored at home and then sent abroad to complete their education. Though the Huggers and Legares were not prolific people, there had always been a son of each who had carried on the name. Now Percy represented the last of the Legares, and Euphemia the last of the Huggers. When my friend first mentioned Euphemia to me, he said that he had always loved her. Having no other playmates like Ferdinand and Miranda, they had through each other discovered the existence of love. Their mothers, the closest friends, had, before their births, their mothers, the closest friends had, before their births, Lagar told me, spent hours together anticipating the arrival of their children. Percy and Euphemia were born during one of the frightful equinoctial storms so prevalent off the southern coast. Old Jeremiah, our household servant, Lagas told me one day when he had lapsed into a storytelling mood, loves to talk of that night. You're sure is meant for something terrible, Master Percy said. Oh my word. I'm going to try and read this in a way where I'm thinking I'm just going to try and read this dialogue in a way where it's like rendered into modern English purely because I kind of don't know if I'm be doing something wrong by reading it as it's written. I'm just going to just make an executive decision on that one. When I heard you lifting up your voice against the elements of the Lord, I said to your pa that he best consecrate that young'un, that the devil don't do him. The devil don't send his spell on him. But praise God, even you ain't broke up the tempest and save us, Master Percy. Stranger to me, however, than Jeremiah's interpretations the night of the psychic communication that passed between Percy's mother and Euphemia's. Was the psychic communication that passed between Percy's mother and Euphemia's. My mother, Lagar continued, felt that her spirit went out to meet her friends, and she knew that Euphemia was born. When she described her experience to Mrs. Huguer, she found that Euphemia's mother too had been conscious of the same merging of spirit. As far as Lagar knew, this was the only psychic experience of which the two women had been conscious. The fact, however, that his mother, in perfect health, had died at precisely the time that Mrs. Huguer, a consumptive, had died, led him to believe that there was much that he had not been told. Those portions of the sciences that bordered on the abstruse interested Lagar. Wireless telegraphy and telephony he regarded as means by which physical barriers were to be erased. Well, yeah, that's what they're for. Lagar did not re-enter the university the following fall. It seemed to me altogether right that he should return to his plantation, his books, and to Euphemia, whom he soon married. As for me, I anticipated with eagerness the time when I might visit them in their island home. Winters, however, were filled with college activities, and during the sultry sea island summers, the Lagars roamed, nomad fashion, in Alaska and the Canadian Rockies. Then came the war, and for me, American cantonments in France. Percy Lagar volunteered, but on account of underweight and a certain fragility of appearance, he was rejected. It was therefore not until the fall of 1918 that I visited the plantation. Lagar, accompanied by the faithful Jeremiah, met me on the mainland and carried me across in his motorboat. In the late afternoon, we tied to the pier and walked together through the sandy paths arched by great pines from which hung the tropical grey moss. Stretching as far as the eye could see lay fields still white with unpicked cotton, dotted here and there by the bright bandanas and gay shirts of the workers who were filling their crocus bags. Yes, I had to make a bit of an executive decision there as well. It wasn't like an actual slur, but it's a word. It's the still not exactly polite version of that word that, technically you're not supposed. Technically, it's not a slur, but it still seems considered really old-fashioned to say it, so I'm not going to. Anyway, where is it? There we go. Where did I lose myself? Crocus back there. The house was large and impressive, after the manner of pioneer colonial architecture, with pillars and a piazza as a happy afterthought. It was flanked on both sides by rows of whitewashed cabins. Restrained elegance and prosperity characterized the picture. Euphemia greeted us, descending the wide front steps and holding out her hands. If I were an artist of the Impressionist school, I should paint Euphemia as I saw her that day, all eyes and hair, eyes dark and burning, in a setting of light and shadow, hair blacker than the raven's wing and far more lustrous, coiled on a neck milk-white and bare-throated. The room to which Percy and Euphemia led me was in keeping with the rest of the house. Here, as elsewhere, antique mahogany bespoke an inheritance of culture and affluence. This room was my mother's, Percy explained, and that is a picture above the mirror. Oh, sorry. I once again accidentally switched the page to the very big first. So now I have to do it again, which means now I have to wait for the entire thing to reload so I can then zoom in, which might take a minute. Okay, no, it actually loaded properly. Okay, not 2 pages, 1. There we go. Sorry. I'm just going to zoom in. Oh, there we go. I leave it here because it seems to make the room still hers. The face of Laetitia Lagar was beautiful with a beauty that challenged one to define its source. I felt strangely possessed with a sense of kinship with the dead woman. How lovely your mother is, and how like you, I said. There was never between two people more nearly perfect understanding, he said, than between my mother and me, except between Euphemia and me. I'm not sure you should brag about that, but okay. I loved her and she loved me, Euphemia said gently, and then added with a smile, but she grew a bit jealous of me, didn't she, Percy? Oh, I was not expecting it to actually go there. Well, perhaps, Lagar said, but mothers are human and only divine love knows no jealousy. As the weeks passed, I spent an absurd amount of time before the portrait of Percy's mother, and I began to understand how it is that men have gone mad because of the pictured face of a woman. Never had I felt myself so in the grip of another's personality. Are you telling me that you're getting a crush on your college friend's dead mother? It's a bit of an awkward situation, I'm just going to say. Just a bit of an awkward situation. I'm going to take a drink. I'm just going to sorry. You can resume now. Sorry, I'm just needing to take a drink anyway to moisten my throat. So let's continue. Here we go. Yes. I was to find later that this obsession remained with me long after my departure from the island. So you are getting a crush on your college roommate's dead mother. I don't know what to tell you, dude. It's not great. I will say, not great, not ideal. Sorry, I'm just waiting for. Sorry, I'm getting a response here. Hold on a second there. Hold on. Sorry, I just got a curious message. I can't actually respond to that, so I have to in there. Hold on a second, please. I'm just going to write a response because I'm genuinely baffled by this. So, Okay, I actually sent it. Where am I current? There we go. So, okay, now we can resume. Sorry. So, I had been only a short time with the Lagars when I realized that Euphemia was ill, and that the bright spots that glowed upon her cheeks evidenced the ravages of the disease to which her mother had been a victim. One evening, when the three of us were sitting before a fire of fragrant dried pine, Euphemia began to talk earnestly of death. There was in her voice a never to be forgotten quality that lent dignity even to the most casual things she said, a deep toned resonance soft as the southern air she breathed. I used to dread the coming of death, she said, because I thought it meant separation from Percy. Now I know that a union like ours can know no end. Lagar's hand closed over his wife's. I saw, as I searched his face, that he knew how inevitable was the end, and I guessed the reason for those long visits to other altitudes. You mean, I asked, that you have faith in communication after death? Yes, Euphemia replied. Just how I should find a way to reach Percy, I do not know. Perhaps in our experiments with wireless telephony, we are nearing the solution of the problem. I wouldn't exactly, but okay for now. Seems a bit of a stretch, but okay. It occurred to me then that Percy's consuming interest in the progress of radio, an interest that had resulted in his becoming one of his best operators in the country, had had its beginnings in his dread of separation from Euphemia. At the end of my visit, when Euphemia waved her farewell to me, I felt that I should not see her again. In the months that followed, however, my mind turned more frequently to the portrait of Percy's mother than to other friends. I had left on the island, and and the sense of nearness to the dead woman deepened with time. Soon Lagarde wrote that he was taking his wife to the far west in the hope of defeating her malady. Then followed the losing fight. Letters came from both of them, brave, gay, sad letters that tore at my heartstrings. Then this telegram. Then this telegram. Euphemia is dead. God give me courage. Percy Lagarde. My first thought was for the reason of the man left so utterly desolate. It was not possible for me to join Lagarde upon his arrival at the plantation. 6 weeks later, however, my affairs made ready for a long absence, I started south. It had now been more than 3 years since I had seen my friend, and I feared the changes I might find. Again, Lagarde met me, accompanied by Jeremiah. Except for a clearer pallor and deeper shadow beneath his eyes, Percy seemed very much the same, but Jeremiah was different. Checking the chat. Okay, where is it? Okay, where is it now? Yeah, up here. Okay, wait a second. There we go. We can continue. While his master busied himself with the motor of the boat, the old man beckoned me aside. For God, Master Rogers, he said, there's spirits on top of that island. All the others flew. Even I hadn't promised Master Percy's paw to bring him up. I'd have been gone too. Have you and Mr. Lagarde been on the plantation alone? I asked. Yes, Master Percy. He done discharge the overseer day for yesterday. Say they ain't no use to him now, that with no hands to work. Me and him and the spirits, that's all on the island. I'm not going to read. I'm telling you, Master Rogers. Percy untied the boat and called to us that he was ready. Aren't you coming, Jeremiah? He asked. The old man shook his head, and the tears streamed down the furrows of his face. Sorry, I've lost my spot. And wanted to actually wait a little bit for someone to show up again. I do think that after this one, I want to read the other Frank Owen that I had from the magazine, just in case, just to make sure that I cover all the basics in case people aren't that interested in these other ones. So yeah, I'm waiting a little bit just for someone to show up. I'm waiting for someone else to show up as well that I specifically sent an invitation to, but actually, I'm going to check and see if I had sent the invitation. I guess I hadn't. Okay. That might explain. Hold on a second, please. I'm just going to go. And I'm just going to go and... yeah. So I'm just going to put this here. Okay, so I sent out the invitation. I already sent it out before. But, yeah. But I forgot to send out this one in particular, so yeah. So just making sure, and yeah. Did I actually put this out? No. Oh right, I've completely forgotten to put it here as well. So have been. Okay. There we go. I actually discovered that I forgot to send it into this other server as well, where I was I mentioned it, but I didn't actually send the link. So that's so yeah. I'm just gonna wait until I sent that out. Oh, and while we're at it, there's one other person I forgot to send this to. So hold on a second while I actually load. I know this is kind of unprofessional doing it in the middle of a story, but I'm still waiting for someone else to show up anyway, so that I can continue. So I don't want to be annoying with this at all, and I'm sorry to people watching this in the board later. Here it is. Oh. Okay then. Okay. Come on now. So what does this do? I don't know what these icons do. Like, what is the point? I really should try one of these sometimes just to make sure. Anyway, yeah. Sorry, I'm just going through this and waiting for someone specifically to show up there. As I said, I would really like to for someone to show up just so I can finish reading this story and then hopefully read the other Frank Owen at least. I kind of at the moment there we go. So just to continue the story where we left off. It's the devil's work, Master Percy. I don't tell you the devil bring you that night he was born. For God, Master Percy, leave that haunted island. The Gar smiled sadly as he started the engine. All right, take care of yourself, Jeremiah. We'll look you up when we come ashore, he said. We chugged away, and far out we could still hear the lamentations of Jeremiah. Reaching the island, I was amazed by its utter desolation, unprepared as I was for the rapidity with which the vegetation grows under the semi-tropical sun, and for the completeness with which the humid heat destroys all evidence of paint upon the buildings. Stubby underbrush clogged the paths. Dried cotton stalks from which the yellowing balls had not been picked attempted to rise among the weeds that enveloped them. The house, after its years of disrepair and unattended summers in the blistering southern sun, was devoid of paint and care. The rains of several seasons had washed from the cabins all the whiteness that on my former visits had given them an appearance of sanitary well-being. It was twilight when we picked our way through the path and entered the house. Lagarde explained that the electric light system was out of order, and in the absence of lamps, he lighted the tall candles provided for the ancestral candelabra. The high-ceilinged rooms, their heavy mahogany furniture and shadowy corners assumed an aspect of weirdness that made me quite realize why, following a death, the superstitious blacks had embarked for some more cheerful quarters. There descended upon me an unreasoning foreboding of evil. As darkness deepened, I was conscious of fear and of a desire to leave the plantation and mingle with the throngs under the glare of city lights. It was the radio, Lagarde explained to me as we sat before the great log fire that night, that frightened them away. Before we went west, the instrument, as you know, had not reached so high a state of perfection. I had been working with the machine all these years, and upon my return began at once to modernize my equipment. One night I just returned in on a concert. So I tuned in on a concert when Jeremiah entered. There had already been in the cabin strange reports of happenings here. So when Jeremiah carried back the news of the voices I was listening to, there was an exodus which I could not stay. "You are in a far better frame of mind," I said, "than I expected to find you." "Yes," Lagarde answered, "I'm not unhappy, and despite being here alone, not lonely. You see, I have Euphemia with me always." "You mean," I asked, "that you have established communication with the spirit world?" "Yes, a mental communication that brings peace to me, nothing more. I do feel sometimes that I must hear her voice, see her face, but the madness that this longing brings does not last. I know that some day, in some way, she will speak to me." Sorry. Checking the chat for a second. What's this? Okay. I'm just going to clear my throat for a bit and just wait for a couple of seconds. And yeah, I'm just going to check. I just had to respond to that question that I got. Sorry. Where was the thing I was trying to... Okay, no response there yet either. Sorry, I'm just going to check. Okay, yes, so there's not that much left. Okay, I was just making sure because there was one other one that was like 6 or 7 pages. But I'm making sure it was not this one because this one's a bit different. I couldn't really imagine them stretching this out to another 4 pages after this. So, yeah. Although I'm wondering how they're going to actually... how the whole dead motherism thing is going to come back into this. So, waiting for a little bit just to have someone else join up. I'm sorry for the intrusion and for the stalling. Okay, I'm just going to open this up just to see what I can close now. That's a different one. Okay, that's old. Okay. Okay, unprinted browse. Okay, just updating this page counter. Okay. And we're here. Now just waiting again for someone to show up so we can finish up the story. And then to continue with... I'm actually gonna check the Frank Owen one I have in mind. Oh, that one has pretty nice illustrations. The text isn't that long, at least it appears to be. Yes. Okay. Howard Thurston. That name seems familiar somehow. Thurston, anyway. So yeah, Frank Owen one is both intriguing and also doesn't have to seem that long. So we're going to definitely get back to that. I want to hopefully clear this out. Okay, so I'll just find the spot where I left off and continue reading this for the sake of the people watching the VOD. So we have, although I don't want to not talk, it's a little dispiriting to be. It's a little dispiriting to be reading something with no one actually watching, which is yeah, kind of is a bit of a. Sorry, just a minute. Okay, just want to get there. Okay. That's fair enough for that. No answer to that yet. No idea what they meant by that. Sorry if it's sort of boring right now. I don't mean to bore anyone watching this later. It's just I have this thing where it's like I really don't want to just keep reading something actively with no one watching. It's kind of not what I was expecting to do and not what I was hoping for. So. Okay, just making sure. Okay, set that out as well. Okay. Okay, then we can continue. Sorry, it took so long. I'm just going to pretend I didn't see that. So we have. Okay. Then Lagar fell silent, and the rest of the evening we sat, talking now and then, but for the most part watching the smouldering and spitting of the great logs. At midnight, by the light of one of the candles, Lagar led me to the room I had formerly occupied. The immense four-poster with its draperies and side curtains, the gigantic highboy and massive bureau that caught and held the shadows would, I think, have been terrifying to a more hardy occupant than I. From out of the portrait above the mirror the eyes of Laetitia Lagar found and followed me. In the dimly lighted room the white draperies seemed to flutter with the candles' flickerings, giving to me an uncanny sense of the nearness of Laetitia Lagar. Oddly enough, I welcomed the portrait as the one bit of reality in this mansion of past greatness. As soon as possible I burrowed beneath the coverings of the bed. Outside, the wind from the sea screamed as it cut its way through the pines. Every shutter clattered on rusty hinges. Loosely fitting windows rattled, and warped old boards creaked their gloomy accompaniment. Then, just at what hour I do not know, a flutter that might have been made by the wings of a fairy passed my door. Then there was the sound of Lagar's door being gently opened and of something entering. I raised myself upon my elbow and listened. At first I heard only the howling of the wind and the shaking of the old house. At length from Lagar's room someone seemed to be tiptoeing down the stairs. I was certain that I heard the click of the radio in the room below, and then for hours there was no sound save the eerie noises of the night. At last I slept the sleep of exhaustion. Twice the next day I was about to tell Lagarde of the happenings of the night before, but the gaunt, drawn look on his face and the starry light in his eyes deterred me. Surely I had come to comfort my friend, not to harass him. I did, however, that day begin urging Percy to leave the island and come home with me. Later, he replied earnestly. Later, but not now. I said no more that day, but I found myself continually dreading the approach of darkness. Undoubtedly, in a house so old, so large, one's overwrought nerves could give various interpretations of the noises of the night. Hence I determined to investigate anything that was not self-explanatory. Entering the room just before midnight, I sought the eyes of Letitia Lagarde, and from their steady gaze there seemed to flow into me a courage for whatever undertaking might seem necessary. On the table by my bed, I placed a lighted candle and waited. It was just at midnight that again I heard a fluttering past my room, and the sound of Lagarde's door being gently opened, and later someone creeping down the stairs. I rose and prepared to follow the sounds. The candle I carried was insufficient to pierce the blackness, which, as I entered the hall, seemed to close in upon me with strangling intensity. The weak old balustrade trembled as I grasped it for support. Sickly lines of pale light outlined the living room door, but from within came no sound to relieve the ghastly stillness. In the hall I paused, trying to still the wild pumping of my heart. Then noiselessly I opened the door and peered into the room. In the far corner a candle cast its wan light, and there before the radio knelt Percy Lagarde, an agony of earnestness on his face. So the footsteps of the stair were explained, but not the sound that preceded Percy's descent. From the vantage ground of the darkened hall I watched for a moment unnoticed. Lagarde was listening, it appeared, for a voice that did not come, hoping against hope, fighting despair. I don't want. I have did the thing. I have to actually look. I have to minimize this, and I have to go back one page, and we are fighting despair and hopelessness. Looking up, he saw me. "Oh, I am sorry," he said, with the quick thought for others that marked his every act. "I am sorry to have disturbed you, Henry. Why do you do this every night?" I asked, wearing yourself out to no avail. "It will not always be to no avail," he answered, pathetic eagerness in his voice. "Some day I shall hear, and then there will be rest. Until then I must listen. You believe she will reach you over the radio? She believed that she could. Now I have the strongest amplifier that has been made, and I have experimented with many wavelengths. Sometimes I am sure that the first syllable of my name is being pronounced, and then there comes insistent interference as though the voice was being intercepted. Sometimes I feel that the interference must be in the spirit world. I must hear her, I must," he added, in a fervour of earnestness. "If you love me, Henry, leave me alone." I obeyed and returned to my room. As time passed, other changes in Lagarde were evident. He ate little, and instead of taking the walks that were his custom, sat idly on the piazza before the fire. It was, moreover, the glow in his eyes that alarmed me most. They were not the eyes of a normal human being, nor yet the eyes of a madman. They were the eyes of one seeing into a world beyond, and jealously striving to see further. Each night there came the soft flutter past my door, the sound of someone entering Lagarde's room, and then the almost noiseless descending of the stairs and the click of the wireless instrument. I had become sufficiently accustomed to the routine to return to my regular habits of sleep, when one night I was awakened by the opening of my door. I felt certain that someone entered and hovered over my bed. I lay quiet in the utter stillness of the room. Soon afterward there came the flutter in the hall and the creaking of the steps. The noises emitted by the radio I would swear were different from those I had heard on other nights. Numb and awed, I lay awake until I heard the returning footsteps on the stairs. All the following day, Lagarde seemed more than ever abstracted, and the food he prepared for me he scarcely touched. It was quite evident now that neither Lagarde nor I could much longer stand the strain of nights on a desolate island. Hence I argued valiantly in behalf of immediate departure. It actually says in behalf, not on behalf. I don't know if that's it. But Percy, said I, as we sat before the fire at twilight, this is the last night I am going to remain in this place, and you are coming away with me tomorrow. Lagarde's head rested wearily against the carved back of the fine old Chippendale chair, and bluish-grey lids closed over his eyes. After tonight I will do as you say. Surely after tonight it will be possible for me to leave. Oh, I am tired, so tired. After tonight you may take me away, but tonight I must be here. I retired early, hoping that before midnight I might get some of the rest I needed. Lagarde's last words, running over and over in my mind, gripped by sickening fear. I lay staring into the darkness about me. Shutters clattered. A dead branch fell to the ground. Waves beat against the sands of the beach. A flash of lightning intensified the shadows of the room. Then rain added its din to the noises of the southern midwinter storm. To still the beatings of my heart, I repeated senseless jingles dormant in my memories since childhood. On and on I went in a futile effort to drown fear. Then I seemed to know that the door had been opened and to feel someone hovering over my bed. Minutes like hours went by while the presence lingered. There was the nightly fluttering past my door, and still the presence lingered. I remember making one last effort to bring reason to my rescue. Was it a spirit that held me powerless to resist? If so, was there another passing my door and entering Lagarde's room? Then my mind went blank, and acting no longer merely registered impressions. I could hear Lagarde running down the stairs. The radio whirred, crashed, hissed. Then I felt myself taken gently by the shoulders and propelled towards the door. It was the steps, and down. Down, down I was going, powerless to resist, down through the blackness, perhaps to some doom awaiting me, past fear, past hope, dominated by the unknown, possessed by another. The grip relaxed as we reached the room in which the instrument had been placed. By the light of a single candle I saw Lagarde kneeling before the radio, straining every nerve to catch the slightest sound. Cold and numb, still in the grip of a force that brought me down, I watched my friend as he listened. Then through the amplifier there came the never-to-be-forgotten voice of Euphemia Lagarde, summing up in its soul hunger all the love the woman heart has felt for its mate and left unexpressed. Percy, Percy, came the voice. Lightning sent its jagged forks through the sky. Thunder crashed. The radio whirred in angry accompaniment. From out the stillness that followed, another voice that seemed to me linked with all my dreams and all my yearnings came clear and sweet. The voice of motherhood, the same yesterday, today, and forever. The voice of all mothers of all ages. Henry Rogers, were the words it said. I am Percy's mother. Save my boy. There followed crashes of the elements, stranger sounds from the instrument, noises that could be linked only to immortal souls in mortal conflict. At length, commanding and triumphant, came the voice of Euphemia Lagarde. Percy, 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 I want you, come to me. With the cry of Euphemia, beloved, Percy Lagarde fell at my feet, on his face the peace of one who has come to an end of his journey and found rest. So that was the voice of Euphemia, and now I believe that should do it for today. I did want to do the other Frank Owen one, but I'm a little worried that I could, well, I'm a little. I don't want to just go on about with no one listening. So I'm wondering, if someone shows up within some time, I can do the next one I had planned, or I can do it like tomorrow or Monday. It really depends, because I don't know. I do know that it's my fault for not having advertised this a bit earlier ahead of time, but it was kind of an impromptu decision on my end, to be honest. So I'm just going to quickly check this and then check this. Okay. So, okay, well, there's someone that showed up, so I might as well. Kind of. I wish that they didn't immediately invalidate what I just said. It's kind of annoying in that way. Sorry. I don't understand the question that I just got asked. Well, okay. So I'm just going to put this here in the thing so it actually shows up. Now the thing about, I can definitely close this so I can have some of this. Don't have all of this open. Oh yes, I was actually, this needs to also, because I can close this one as well because that's not necessary because I already did that. And this is the thing I'm reading, and this is the thing that I will be. What's the problem now? Okay, that's there. Now, can I actually change the title, or is this just? I know you could. Why is it on YouTube? I can't do anything with the title of this. It does edit. What does edit do? Does it let me? Okay, I can't do that because it doesn't let me really do anything else with this. Oh, probably wasn't the best to put that in entertainment, but well, it is. But I feel that it was a little bit of an impromptu decision. Okay, well, perhaps today isn't the best day for this. So yeah, I'm just going to say within like say 4 minutes. If nobody shows up, then I'll just do this tomorrow or on Monday. I don't want to just prattle on with no one. I accept this. I don't want to repeat myself either. So it's 59. So like 03, 04. So I'm just going to sit here and wait a little bit. So I'm sorry to anyone who's watching this in the VOD and is annoyed at my pausings and protestations and whatnot. Let me just see that. I'm just checking to see if I got any particular messages in the meantime. I did got a very weird, confusing message, and I'm trying to find out what it's being meant by that, but I haven't got an answer to it yet, so it's definitely odd. So, yeah. This is from, well, I feel that, I want to actually just talk about random things, but yeah, to this when unrelated to this stream when no one's watching but actually want to say at least something and not just sit here silently. But let me just see. Well, this is from the first issue of Tales of Magic and Mystery, which was it was a pulp magazine that started in December of 1927, and it actually only lasted. It only lasted a total of 5 issues, and it actually. Yeah, I'm trying to see if I don't like mislead people, and so I don't mislead people and say, "Oh, see, yeah, it only lasted until April of 1928, so a total of 5 issues."
just trying to see. Yeah, okay, so about 2 more minutes. If not, well, I'm just gonna start the next recording with this. Probably gonna also have to include a couple of shorter Lovecraft stories from weird tales of this time period, like Hypnos or whatever, which I also ran across, mainly so I can actually lure people in to watch it at all, because a lot of people might not be that interested in just general weird tales stuff unless we specifically start out with a name that they actually know and recognize. I mean, I doubt that, for example, I'm going to get anyone streaming in, excited by the prospect of reading something by Vida Tyler Adams or Edith 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 Lichty Stewart, for example. Edith Lichty Stewart, I guess. So, yeah. In this case, I'm just going to go and I'm just going to go and do the Frank Owen stream tomorrow. No, strictly a Frank Owen stream, just a stream where I actually read more of Frank Owen and other stuff, for example, but which I also advertise a couple of hours ahead of time so people can actually join and make time for it. But so yeah, thanks everyone for actually having watched the first few stories we read. Sorry for my continuous stumbling towards the end of there. I will we'll pick this up tomorrow. Hopefully nothing will go get in the way of that. Sorry for mumbling and rambling and whatnot. So yeah, I'll just see you all tomorrow then, and peace.